Well, 2020 is finally coming to a close, and I don't think anyone could argue that it has definitely been a strange one. But as hard as everything has been, I must admit that a lot of really great things happened for me this year, specifically with this channel. In 2020, we hit 100,000 subscribers and I received my silver play button from YouTube. I've been able to partner with some brands that I never would have imagined I'd get the chance to partner with. And most importantly, I've been able to connect with so many amazing photographers, videographers, and YouTubers who want to learn, grow, share, and create. You guys are so passionate, so creative, and you've always got the most amazing questions in the comments, on Twitter, and in my DMs. So when I was thinking about what I should do for the last video of 2020, it seemed pretty obvious that we should do a Q&A to answer some of your awesome questions. So grab a coffee, let's answer some questions. All right, so I reached out to you guys over on Twitter and Instagram and here on YouTube and asked you to give me any questions that you wanted me to answer before the end of 2020. We're gonna keep this pretty informal. I'm just gonna be reading questions off my phone. I'm gonna try and get through as many of them as possible. And if you still have a question or you didn't get a chance to submit one for this video, leave a comment down below. I'm still doing my best to try and answer as many as I can, so you can leave them down there. Okay. There's a decent amount, so let's get started here. I hope this isn't like a super long video. The first question is from Christoph. What are your photography goals for next year? Is there one special shot you would love to make? Photography goals for next year would just be to be more creative with my photography. I find myself kind of getting into the same types of shots and doing the same things and kind of just taking photos for a video or for Instagram specifically and not thinking about it so much from a creative standpoint. So I'd like to kind of reignite that creativity. And no, I don't have a specific shot that I'd like to get for next year, just to be more creative overall with it. Next, we got a question from Michael. What's your favorite prime lens? To be a little more specific, what's your favorite focal length? And if you've tried more than one lens from that focal length, which lens specifically is your favorite? That's a really tough one. I am a zoom lens lover, but I really loved the Sigma 105mm macro. I haven't bought it yet. I had to send back the one that I had for the review, but I think I will buy it. So that's probably my favorite. All right, we got a really big one from Jed. I'm gonna read this and then break it down here. So first off, they ask what category I put my videos in. I think it's in education, but I don't find it makes much of a difference. And then they ask, in getting to this stage that you're at right now with the community that you've built, the amount of subs and viewers you have, did anything really kickstart that? Did I have a viral video, a larger channel feature my work? For me, there were a couple of videos when I started doing lens reviews. I think the Sigma 16mm f1.4 and a couple of videos right around that time that kind of took off a little bit, and that really helped to kickstart the channel as far as more views and more subscribers goes. Next question is from Nick. Any advice to those starting a YouTube channel or photography business? How did you get exposure on YouTube in a business sense? My biggest advice would be to start with what you're passionate about. This channel didn't start as a photography videography channel. It started out as like a vlogging channel. And then it kind of gradually morphed into what it is today because I like to talk about photography and videography. When I first started the channel, I also had just picked up a camera for the first time. So it was something that I was learning and was passionate about talking about. And so I ended up talking about it, and then I ended up making whole videos about it. But it all started because I was passionate about photography, videography, vlogging, those kinds of things. And then it kind of gradually found its way into what it is now. It's a little bit different for everybody, but that's the way that it worked for me. All right, Wes asks, think the A7 IV is coming? I do think it's coming. If I had to make a guess, and I have zero insider information here, if I had to make a guess, I'd say late 2021 or maybe early 2022. Alex says, how did you work up the courage to start my own YouTube channel? Honestly, it didn't really feel like working up the courage. It kind of just felt like something fun to try. They also said, I'm starting mine, but there's a lot of self-doubt in the process. I get that. There's still a lot of self-doubt every day, every week, every time I make a video. The key is to remember that like this is supposed to be fun. And I think if you start to take it too seriously, I guess depending on what kind of channel you have, but if I was to start to take this way too seriously, I feel like that wouldn't make for good videos. I feel like it wouldn't be as much fun anymore for you guys who like to watch my videos. You got this. All right, we got one over on Twitter from the BMJW. Could you lend some insight as to your script prep process and how you put down / organize your thoughts? I've gone through a couple of different iterations of this. It first started out as kind of stream of consciousness, just putting down points, and I would just kind of go off the cuff based on those points. Then for a while, I actually got into word for word scripting, but what I noticed is that my videos from about a month ago to about 6 months ago were feeling a little cold to me. So I've gone back to a little bit less scripted, less teleprompter, a little bit more off the cuff, a little bit more fun, more jokes, those kinds of things. As far as the actual process, I just kind of start really general with all of the main ideas that I want to hit, and then I gradually fill in the blanks in between all of those. It kind of always starts very general and then gradually funnels down. And also there's a little bit more information on that on my video on how to make reviews. So I'll link those up here. Jacob says, how much time do you spend on your channel weekly? That fluctuates a lot. Generally, I have one full day to kind of film and get my basic edit down. And then there's usually a couple hours almost every morning where I do a little bit of like Dunna Did It stuff. And some of that is like admin and emails and that kind of stuff. But I would say it's probably somewhere between 12 and 16 hours per week, but that might be changing a little bit in 2021. Chris Brockhurst says, favorite video you've watched on YouTube all year, preferably outside your niche. I don't know that I could narrow it down to just one video, but I really like the channel Jack Conte Extras. If you know Jack Conte, he is the CEO of Patreon. He also had a channel called Pomplamoose, has a channel called Pomplamoose with his wife where they make cover songs and it's just amazing. But he's got this one channel called Jack Conte Extras and it's all of his kind of like business brain, YouTube, Patreon, that kind of stuff. And I absolutely love the way that he puts stuff together over there. It's not the type of videos that I like to make, but I really, really love the way that he puts stuff together and it's so valuable. All right, Michael asks, is there even really a chance I could make it on YouTube? I'm not Canadian, which I'm pretty sure is a requisite for success. That's funny. I don't think you need to be Canadian to make it on YouTube. Second of all, yes, I do think that there's still room for more people on YouTube. I don't think that that'll ever change. I think that it's kind of like this turnover thing. And I think that there's more people than ever watching YouTube, which means that there can be more people than ever creating for YouTube. And it's not easy. It's not guaranteed by any means, but there's still room for more. Sightseeing Susie says, what are your favorite places to photograph in Canada? I'm there for 6 weeks next year and I want some awesome shots. Honestly, I haven't explored a lot of Canada. A lot of people don't know this, but Canada is gigantic. So, I mean, 6 weeks, I don't know how much exploring you're doing, but definitely the Rocky Mountains, Banff, Jasper, in Alberta, and then into BC. Those are kind of my places that I have frequented and do like to take photos and that kind of stuff. All of Canada is covered in beauty, so it's tough to narrow it down, but I definitely do love the Rockies here in Alberta. And speaking of Alberta, the next question here, Anurag, hopefully I pronounced that right, says, hey Dunna, love your videos. What is it like to live in Edmonton? Where have you lived prior to living there? Love from India. First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. Second of all, Edmonton is pretty darn cool, and I mean that both in a literal and figurative sense. The one thing that I really love about Edmonton is the river valley. It's got the longest connected park system in North America. So our park system runs from like one corner of the city down to the other along the river that runs through our city. And it's absolutely stunningly beautiful, both in the warmer times and in the colder times. It's just an amazing city if you want to just like explore the river valley basically endlessly. And as far as where I've lived before, I grew up in a place called Lloydminster, which is about 2 hours from here. And then I lived in London, Ontario for a couple of years when I was going to school, which happens to be the home place of another YouTuber that you guys might know. And if you do, if you can guess who it is, leave a comment down below. All right, next question from Deegan's Room. I think Deegan's Room? Deegan's. Sorry about the pronunciation. Hello, I've heard that you're doing a Q&A, so I've got a question. What motivates you to keep editing and making videos? There are a multitude of things that motivate me. First of all is the fact that I love the creative portion of what I do here. Second of all, I love a challenge, and this whole YouTube thing all started as kind of a challenge to myself to see if I could make a video every week. And so that's pretty much just continued. And you know, now it's become more of a serious thing. It is part of my income now, so there's a little bit of motivation from that. And then I just really love connecting with all the people that I get to connect with and all the brands that I get to connect with through this channel. So that's enough motivation for one person. Kyra, James, and Finn ask, hi, my question is, looking back at your YouTube growth, what would you have not done if you were to do it over? Oh, that's very interesting. What would I have not done? Okay, no, I've got a couple. So this channel actually started out, I started this channel to host my music stuff. So there's like a couple of performance videos and stuff on there. And I did at one point kind of try and meld the two together. And I did like some interesting performance videos that like, they just really don't fit on this channel. Like maybe I could have done them on another channel or maybe for Instagram or something like that. I think maybe I would have left those out. They were fun to do, but they just didn't fit. All right, this one's a good one. If you had the opportunity to work with any living celebrity for any project of your choice, who would you choose and what would you make with them? Now, this is gonna be easier for me than you'd think. It's always Justin Timberlake. I would love to do nearly any project with Justin Timberlake, whether that be something musical, something to do with video or photo or whatever. I would just absolutely love to work with Justin Timberlake. Specifically, I'd love to make music with him though. So I think that would be kind of the number one thing, is I would love to like do a track with JT. All right, our next question coming from Rayon is there something that you did or achieved in 2020 that you're proud of? This one is kind of a big one for me. For the past bunch of years, my wife and I have been working our way towards getting out of debt, some debts that we had from starting our own business a handful of years ago, and just student loan debt, that kind of stuff. And we finally, as of literally this month, are out of debt completely, which is such a fantastic feeling. Throughout 2019 and 2020 specifically though, we both kind of really kicked it into gear as far as doing extra work, making extra money, those kinds of things. So, and YouTube has been a huge part of that, because I have another job and YouTube has been this kind of gravy money that's allowed us to get out of debt. So that's a huge achievement for us, and I'm excited to see what we can do with a little bit more financial freedom going forward. And my battery's gonna die. All right, next question coming from Afong is, where do you see your photography in 5 years? That's a really tough one. I think I'd like to do some more kind of creative studio work sometime in the next couple of years, but I don't really know what that is yet. Leela asks, is Q getting a sibling soon? For those of you who don't know, my cat Q-Bert is an old grump, and I don't think that a sibling would be good for him at this point. Maybe when he was younger, but I think we waited too long at this point. All right, Saeed says, what game do you have the most hours in? I am the furthest thing from a gamer. I literally just got rid of my PS3, not PS4, PS3, because I wasn't really playing it at all. But I can tell you that I've played the Skate franchise, Skate 1, Skate 2, and Skate 3. And then I also play a lot of Zelda A Link to the Past for Super Nintendo on an emulator. And I just keep replaying it over and over and over again. I don't need new games, but honestly, I don't play very often. Andre says, any films or directors that inspire your style of filmmaking? That's a tough one because I don't really do any kind of narrative work necessarily. So like my filmmaking is YouTube filmmaking at this point, but a couple that I really love, Christopher Nolan is one, David Fincher's another one. And then I don't know who shot it, but The Queen's Gambit, absolutely fantastic from a visual standpoint, as well as like a story standpoint. Actually, the whole thing is just fantastic. If you haven't seen it already, I'm probably the 900th person to tell you that you need to watch it. This is not sponsored by Netflix. All right, our next question from Diogo is, what has been your biggest challenge in filmmaking during this crazy year? The biggest thing has just been the fact that we're just kind of stuck at home, and when I do go out, it's very minimal. I'm trying not to like go to too many places or anything like that. So when my wife and I have been going on walks lately, we've been just kind of doing our same walk over and over, the one that we know we like. But it means that if I do bring the camera with me, I'm not getting new shots. The views aren't changing, that kind of stuff. Not being able to have new sights to see has been pretty difficult this year. Typically, it's only winter time where I get stuck doing a bunch of shots in the studio, but it's been a lot lately. Kevin Oot says, what's your biggest achievement of 2020? Well, earlier I talked about the fact that we got out of debt, which is a huge one, but as far as achievements go, getting 100,000 subscribers was kind of a huge one, and getting the YouTube silver play button plaque was kind of, I don't know, it was absolutely surreal. David says, what's your best purchase of 2020? A 2013 Kia Sorento. And that's coming from a 2003 Dodge Caravan. So I upgraded 10 years. But as far as camera gear goes, I would say either my Sony a7S III, which is the best video camera that I've ever used, or my Aperture 300D Mark II, which I think I got in 2020. It might have been late 2019, but it was like a 2020 thing for me. Flores Media says, how do you convince your wife to let you spend money on gear? LOL, I need the wisdom. I think at first it was really interesting. I set money aside from the income of this channel to invest back into building the channel. But before that, it was really interesting because I have this tendency to pick up hobbies and then just like discard them. So I think when I brought it to my wife that I was like, hey, I'd like to spend a little bit of money on a camera, like, can we talk about that, see if we can save up, those kinds of things. I think that there was a little bit of skepticism because I've definitely picked up a couple of things before that didn't last very long, and for whatever reason this one just did. But my wife is like 100% supportive of everything that I want to try, all my crazy ideas and stuff, as long as I can kind of make sense of them. And like I said, now the channel kind of supports itself, so it doesn't dip into personal funds. All right, David says, what's your favorite tattoo and why'd you get it? That's a really tough one. Probably this guy. So this is like, it's like the brain up top, and then it connects down into the heart down at the bottom, and then there are all the like flowers and leaves and stuff there. And I got it because as I've been getting older, I've been learning a lot about my own kind of emotions, I guess, and like the connection between my logic and my emotions. I've always been a very kind of robotic, logical person. For a long time, kind of just ignored my emotions because they were difficult to deal with. And so this kind of symbolizes the connection between those two parts of me, how important it is to kind of put all of your decisions through not just a logic filter and not be a robot, but also be a human too. And like, so it's got to go through both your brain and your heart. And they have to be connected together. That was kind of the idea behind that one anyway. Antonija, I believe, says, from what point your channel started to seriously grow in a way you could monetize your work? I touched on this a little bit earlier. It was when I started to do kind of the lens reviews that the channel really started to take off. Really, as far as like AdSense goes, as far as like YouTube money kind of thing, that didn't happen until a lot later, or at least it didn't start to get significant until a lot later. You have to have a lot of material on YouTube. I'm not making the money that I make from YouTube from one video or two videos. I'm making it from a catalog of, I don't know how many videos I have, 250 or something like that, 200 videos. It's like a little bit from each video. I think maybe that kind of answers where you were going with that question. Jaren says, what would it take to get you to move away from Canada? I don't know that there's anything really. Maybe an adventure. If I felt like I needed an adventure of living somewhere else for a while, but I would probably come back after. All right, Dominic says, are we ever gonna see vlogs of your music side? Probably not. For those of you who don't know, my full-time job for the past 15, I don't even know how many years, a lot of years. My main thing has been music. I'm a music producer, a recording engineer. And no, I think I kind of purposely kept that part of my life and this part of my life separate because I needed something other than that, because that was what I was doing all the time. And so this was an alternative to that. So, but who knows? I do what I want whenever I want. The next question is, do you think that location affects motivation to keep making videos? And if you could choose to relocate, what city would it be? I don't know that it's necessarily like the city that you live in. For me anyway, I don't think it's like the city that I live in, but being able to kind of change up locations where you're filming and where you're visiting and that kind of stuff every once in a while, I think has a lot to do with my motivation. Like, let's say, for example, you were stuck inside because of, let's say, a global pandemic or something like that. That might have an effect on motivation for sure. That being said, again, I don't think it necessarily is like living in a specific city would motivate me to like make this specific project or anything like that. I think more of that motivation comes from inside, but I do like kind of changing up the scenery every once in a while. We're almost there, you guys. We're almost there. All right, Leech TM says, 2 questions. Do you sometimes have the feeling that you made some kind of mistake with your channel, glanced over it, and now regret it? And second question, do you miss your other hobbies that you've surely sacrificed dedicating a lot of time into YouTube? I don't think I have any regrets with YouTube. I mean, sure, there are some like videos that like maybe I could have not made, but like it doesn't bug me that I've made them. I wouldn't call them regrets by any means. I feel pretty good about everything that I've accomplished, which is a pretty fantastic thing to be able to say. And as far as my other hobbies, the funny thing about that is that like this is the hobby that I chose. This was my creative outlet, and now it's becoming more of my job. I do sometimes kind of miss making music for me, because a lot of my music stuff is very client-based. Like I'm answering to the artists who want me to do certain things. And I would love to like be able to make more music for myself, but I'm trying to build that into 2021. All right, next question from Anna. Thank you for putting together all this amazing content for us. Oh, thanks, Anna. Sony question for fellow Canadian, if you don't mind. I have an art channel and I do a lot of overhead shooting for my painting process. What would you say is the best setting for Sony a6400 to give me good focus, constant on my paper, not on my hands, continually shifting? A bit more of like a technical one, but as far as if you're doing a top-down shot, especially on something that's flat like that, go into manual focus. And what I would suggest is turning on focus peaking and then get focused on that paper on the table, and then just leave it in manual focus. You shouldn't need autofocus for a top-down shot if you're not moving things towards or away from the camera. As long as whatever it is that you're focusing on is staying the same distance from the camera all the time, manual focus is probably the best bet for you. John J. Jonathan. What an epic name. I really hope that your middle name is John as well, so it's just Jonathan. John asks, how's it going, man? What's the most underrated factor in becoming a successful YouTuber? What is the most underrated accessory or accessories that filmmakers should have? Thank you. Perseverance, I think, is probably the most underrated factor. I mean, they talk about consistency and that kind of stuff, but like pushing through when it doesn't feel great, or if you like get used to a certain type of growth and then your channel maybe even doesn't necessarily dip down, but it like flattens off and you kind of feel like, oh, what's happening? Like, should I change something? What do I need to do here? It's like just pushing through those times is really, I think, something that differentiates successful YouTubers to people who quit. And as far as the accessory goes, clamps and gaff tape. Kimberly says, I have an A6600, will be getting into live streaming in 2020. What's the best way to have both myself and my co-host, my hubby, stay in focus the entire time? The best way is to shoot at a less shallow depth of field. So if you're currently using a lens that, let's say, goes down to f1.4, try shooting at something like f4 and introducing more light into your scene. By making your depth of field deeper, there's more chance that you'll be more in focus. If you're both the same distance away from the camera, you're gonna both be in focus. Assuming that you're using autofocus too, that should work for you. Joran says, if you had to choose between having a Sony a7 III and all the Sony G Master lenses or having a red but you can only use vintage lenses with it, what would you choose? Probably the Sony? There's nothing wrong with vintage lenses though, just so that it's said, and a red would be dope. But for what I do as a hybrid shooter, I shoot both photo and video, probably the Sony. Matthew says, the question I have is, how important are dual card slots? Thinking about picking up the A7C over A7 III for wedding videography. I've never had an issue with a card failing on me or anything like that, but I've heard some horror stories, and especially with something that's important like a wedding where like you cannot lose those files. Then dual card slots, unfortunately are pretty important because you're literally making a backup of your work as you go. For weddings, it seems pretty important. Sorry. Oh my goodness, you guys. That was awesome. You guys have some awesome questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted. I'm sorry I didn't get through all of them, but this video would be like hours and hours long, so I tried to pick some. If you still have questions, leave them down in the comments. Send me a DM, send me an email, whatever you want to do. I try to answer as many questions as I possibly can. I love chatting with you guys. You guys have made this such a special year for me. Thank you so much for getting me across 100,000 subscribers. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure to do that. And if you are already subscribed, make sure to go turn the bell notifications on. A lot of you aren't getting the notifications, even if you are subscribed. So make sure you go turn that on. It really does help a lot if you're watching the videos and dropping a like and a comment and those kinds of things. So go do that on this video as well. Thank you all again for such a wonderful 2020. I'll see you all in 2021. Happy New Year. Make sure to stay creative, and I'll see you next time.